Andy with Mountain Computers, the Go Green PC tune-up guy. Today is April something. Anyhow, just got done talking to a couple of my friends, a couple CEOs, and we're getting too old for this. But let me move my whiteboard, and I'm going to show you what it takes to design and develop great infrastructure, great teams, great everything. However, most people don't understand. It's easier than what you think. So when people want to complicate things, that's because they want to complicate things. So anyhow, again, my name is Andy with Mountain Computers, the Go Green PC tune-up guy. And I got done working with some people in the past week on some cloud stuff, and lo and behold, things are serious. When you're working in a real production environment, you have to be serious. You can't mess around. Millions of dollars are at stake per hour. Yet, the architecture, the design, the people behind it supporting it need to be smart. And the people that are actually releasing code into that environment need to be just as smart and cognizant of what you're trying to do. So let's talk about AWS and game day and the folks that are preaching and teaching and trying to share with you something that I think should be handed down from sensei, master, whatever, to junior developers, junior production, junior support, whatever. So let's talk about this, okay? Hopefully you can see this. So I'm gonna write big, so for the old people, it's easy. Okay, so you have this application, okay? This application. And you have just 1 to 300 to 1,000. Okay? Doesn't matter about the language, doesn't matter about the programmers, the coders, whatever, but you have that much. And say, for instance, you're working for a company that is maybe worth $1 to $1 billion. Doesn't matter the money, it's all about the design. When it comes to understanding how things work, you have to understand that 1, are we having fun? 2, is the morale of the team up? 3, are the people capable of learning and come qualified? Now, I always said hire people that are half qualified and half coachable. I learned that from some senior HR directors sometime 30 years ago. And also one of my good mentors, who I mentor. He's old, but he's realizing, hey, we always want to grow and respect our elders, but at the same time, you have to understand communication is number 1, leadership is number 1. Leadership and communication, leadership, having the ability to lead and the ability to communicate, explain, not convince, not sell, just say, this works, okay? So, I was just watching this AWS game day, and I was in video 3, and it just blew my mind away that these guys don't know what they're talking about. I think they're technically smart, but when it comes to communication, they just don't get the point across fast enough. So, I'm going to get the point across, okay? So you have this stack, okay? Okay, so here's your app. Your app's up here. And down here at the bottom, this is hardware. This is ground 0, baby. This is where wires connect everything. Electrons flow, energy, power, connectivity. And as you go up the stack, you get to your application. So, Amazon Web Services, okay? They basically said, AWS. Or Azure. Azure. That's French. You know, look it up. So between these two solution providers, no, there's Google. There's Google over here. So don't forget, I mean, there's 3 platforms. And of course, then you have IBM over here. IBM. So don't forget about this. This is Microsoft and MSFT. This is Amazon. This is Amazon. And this is Google, you know, G-O-O-G. And IBM. Okay, so we got all the stock symbols, we got all the technology platforms, and they all want you to let them take over everything below your application. Now, in order to do that, you got to trust them that your stuff is not somewhere in a cloud running on a 386. They're in some data center, east, west, central, overseas, whatever, multiple redundancies, whatever. And that's why we have all this carbon footprint, go green, whatever technology. So here we are, but 7, number 7. Down here, 1, which is I technically call 0, ground 0, the hardware, okay, the hardware. So as we go up the stack, we go from the hardware to layer 2, okay, 3. This is the, what do you call it, the data link layer. This here is transport layer, layer 4, forget, layer 5, forget, layer 6, forget. So somewhere in here is application, session, presentation, I can't remember the rest. I know this is the data link layer, data LLC, I think. And this is the network layer. What's layer 4? Session, presentation, network, whatever. Presentation, can't remember. Can't remember 4. Session, presentation, network, data link layer. Can't remember. Anyhow, so here's your application. I'll remember it. I'm just tired. I've been working so hard on trying to spin up so many different technologies in the past week, both old and new, legacy and current. But I want to tell you that the game day folks are trying to teach you how to troubleshoot all this, and they're rambling on and on. Okay? They're not getting to the nuts and bolts. Yeah, they're showing you their console, they're showing you your X, Y, and Z, but they're not telling you how the shit really works, okay? And that's what pisses me off. Here you are. Say you call yourself a technology first company, yet you hand over your technology first company to a third party that barely knows what they're doing, and they're hiring people that are half our age, that barely understand how to troubleshoot things from the ground up. And you're handing over your application to an infrastructure. This is your infrastructure. This is what we used to call the data center infrastructure. This infrastructure, we used to have in a data center. And you had NOC people that managed it, and you had really smart people, not many, but a few, that made sure that nobody messed with this. This is like the freeway. Nobody messes with the freeway, okay? The Department of Transportation, basically, like the railroad, says, our job is to get you from point A to point B and stop anybody else from interfering with it. And the same thing goes with information technology. Your infrastructure has to be rock solid. You can't have anybody in this stack messing with you who's half your age or a quarter of your age or somebody with some new invention. It has to be managed and handled appropriately. And the reason why I'm adamant about this is because this game day video, these series of videos, are talking to people that are like in their teens and their 20s who don't know anything about bricks and mortar. So, why I'm passionate is because when I was working at Microsoft, we would go through these code reviews, we'd go through these projects, we'd go through these things. And if you didn't bring your A game to the meeting, you're not coming back to the meeting after the meeting's over. So you need to know what you're doing. My science, or history / teacher in 8th grade, Mr. Eisenhower, he used to go like this. He had a big cigar in his mouth. You point at the screen, you talk about history. This is important. Pay attention. Don't repeat the negative stuff in your history. You'd always tap the screen. He had a big wand and thing before we had anything else. So, do you get that? You're giving over your whole infrastructure over to these companies, and the only place you can control it is at your level. Now, the people that you put in charge, like me, to manage the rest of this, through this, to figure out who, when something breaks, how fast can you get through this? Session, presentation. I want layer 4. What am I? Maybe I got this wrong. Maybe it's 7. Application, session, presentation, transport. No, transport. Is it transport? I can't remember. I'm getting too old for this shit. But I can tell you one thing. L2, L3, that's your encryption. That's your SSL, sort of in a way, but up here, you know, switching, networking, whatever. So, let me explain a little further about why I'm a little upset and pissed about these videos. One of the things that they're missing is the fact that all of the new nomenclature or words or vocabulary dictionary is the same thing from the past, but with new words. Okay? So let's just erase this part for a second, okay? Let's forget the companies for a second. Let's talk about troubleshooting. Let's talk about how you solve a problem, okay? You're at the app level. You've got 1 million plus people on your app, okay? You change your code, you change your infrastructure, you change your tools, you change whatever, okay? So how do you do it? They have this thing called blue-green. There's also a red team. That's over in legal. That's compliance. That's like, oh shit, we fucked up. Excuse my language, but they screwed up. So you get this blue-green team, which means blue means live, green means live, next. So what's going on is you're migrating from one solution to another in a fully meshed, fully scaled, fully clustered, fully redundant architecture. So how do you do it? 1.0, 1.1. Both for your app and your data. So what do? See this right here? Version control. Make sure your app up here knows what the hell it's talking to. Smart enough to where if you can't control any of this, at least you can control that. You can queue up what you're trying to do. Okay? Now, if your data streaming is fast and furious, you'll have maintenance windows, but you have to be careful. It's not perfect. It's not a perfect world, okay? It's not a perfect world. So if you expect perfection, your goal is 5 nines. That's not 100%. That's 99.999%, okay? So 6 minutes of downtime in a year. So let's get the point about this AWS game day. What are they trying to teach you? They're trying to teach you if something in here breaks, how do you know where it's at? If something in there breaks, how do you know? Given the tools that they give you. They don't even tell you, per se, which because it's all browser-based, it's internet-based. You're up here, you're using tools up here to figure out problems down here. That sort of sucks. Okay, so let's talk about this. Got 1 million people. Say, for instance, something happens. You have 1 to 300 apps. Are they isolated? Do they cross-share? Do they go to one database? 2 databases? I mean, what's your data flow diagram? What's your data flow? Let's think about that. What is your data flow? Some guys on YouTube and Twitch and all those, they try to explain one silo, one branch, one tree. And all I can say is, if you're smart enough, you should be able to get tic-tac-toe within seconds. You shouldn't be like fighting around trying to figure out how to win, whatever. It doesn't matter. All I can say is you need to know how to isolate, ascertain, and determine where the problem is based on your standard operating procedures. And if you don't know how, then you need to figure it out. So, you have this app up here. You got 1 million people on it plus. And something happens. And this one guy, he told me, he said, what if you have an alert like X, Y, and Z? And I said, what do you mean X, Y, and Z? Well, you better know what's going on. I mean, is it denial of service? Is it an attack? I mean, what are your vendors? What are your metrics that you have in place that are already going to? Well, if you have 1,000 alarms a day, I go, well, you better not be. 1,000 alarms. That means somebody up the food chain is doing something wrong. Seriously, 1,000 alarms a day? And then he told me the platform, and I was like, oh shit. Well, that explains things. And I wanted to say, are your programmers competent? Are your leads competent? Then he said, well, we have huge memory issues. Well, then fix it. If you put me in operations and support, yeah, we have bandwidth utilization issues, we have contracts, we have, for the money and the time and the spend, your sunk costs, your investment costs, your OPEX, your CAPEX, all these things go into play when it comes down to figuring out, well, maybe you need to refactor your code. If you have huge memory problems, refactor your code to where you don't. I hate to say it, but I have seen organizations where they ask me for my advice, and I tell them, and then they get around it in 2 to 3 years because of resource constraints. But then they're thankful later on. Don't thank me, but then they thank themselves. And, hey, we did it. We figured it out. No, I told you what you should do. You didn't respect me, but you also understood that, you're up here. This down here, it's the freeway, okay? If you expect 1 million users, you have your upper control limit and your lower control limit. And somewhere in there you go from 0 cost to some cost. And in there is your customer. And they are paying you a percentage to manage that and support that. That's money. That's money 101. Okay? So your cost of support, your cost of production, your cost of development, your cost of everything, and then you add management and all of them wanting to make money to run all this. I would hope your management overhead is about 10% or less. And then your operations folks who've been at the company forever that's making this work is either in this by percentage, stock, options, whatever, bonuses, and they're also on a really high salary. We're talking about key man insurance, okay? Because I've ran into some companies where the management, they don't know what they're doing. They just came in, had a lot of money, had enough money, threw it out at the company, said, hey, I get to make decisions. Well, technically, the owners are gone, the owners are dead, the innovators are gone. However, it's a great business, it's a great model, and it's taking off. So, let the people who've helped in the development and the longevity of this solution bring on other people who are just as passionate and smart enough to organize, streamline, optimize, and make this thing just, dial it in. This one guy told me, well, you need to what do you got? What was his words? His words were pretty simple. Oh, you need to I can't remember the word. I was like, I didn't even think about refactoring his code. It was all Java. I was like, oh shit. You're using Java, which Java is great for NASA, government, science. But when you come into some industries, it's perfect, but it's expensive to maintain. So he was giving me all these good scenarios, but hey, I'm a support, I'm an operations guy, I'm a applied research guy. I do my math, I do my study, I do my homework, and I follow up. I make sure that I come back with better solutions than what was presented to me. And if they don't want them, fine. Out of 22 major projects, only one failed, and I had to adopt that project that was already failing, and I had to kill it. Yeah, it was a $2 million loss, but it wasn't my $2 million. Somebody else, a year prior decided to do this, and I was like, let's just avoid the lawsuit, eat the cost, and suck it up. But when it comes down to applications and Amazon's game day, we don't have time in production to play games. I had some people at Microsoft when I was leaving that said, oh, let's go and spend 2 or 3 days offsite and do all these things. No, we're in production. We are a $1 million per hour per system making company. We don't have time to play with theories. Don't take our production staff away from the work. Now, I went over and yeah, it was okay. It was sort of stupid, but I learned some things from it too. You always learn something. There's some takeaways, but you have to realize that some people way at the top, they don't know what they're talking about. They're just making decisions to make themselves look good. Now, that's not necessarily true. I never do that. I never waste people's time. Don't waste my time. But when it comes down to this kind of stuff, I can tell you right now, I've already talked enough, bounced around enough, and I can tell you one thing. Morale, smart people, money, structures, frameworks, layers, customers. It's all about the customer, right? It's all about the solution. It's all about the problem. Now, if somebody tells me they've got an idea, I say, what's the problem? They're like, what do you mean, what's the problem? Well, you have an idea. What problem is it solving? So, I will ask them, where's the problem? Where's the problem? What is the problem? And then we're like, oh, I got this idea. I go, okay, great. You got an idea. So I have 360 more ideas about this problem. Is your idea this big to solve this problem, or only this big? You're like, never thought about that. I go, I know, it's okay, don't worry. I said, when you look at problem solving, we are built, our DNA is built on certain things called balance. So if a pendulum swings this way, gravity, one of the laws that we understand, will bring it back this way. So, laws of physics, laws of everything, there is an equilibrium. Here's the equilibrium. So you have gravity this way. You have gravity this way. And you have an initial state here. And you have a final state of here. So the equilibrium law says as things go up, things go down, and we come back to equilibrium. Now, that is true in all things. If you mess with me and then go away, I will go back to where I was. In some state. Improved, unimproved, better or worse. So, when it comes to apps, here's your app. The game day people said, trust us for everything underneath. Here's AWS. Underneath all that, right? Are you going to trust your application to sit on this or sit on another platform? How easy is it to manage this versus other solutions? I have learned from my experience over the last 4 years, 3.5 to be exact, before I started the idea. Which one is it? Azure, Microsoft, AWS, Amazon, or Google? The only thing that made me choose AWS was that their interface to this was detailed enough to prove to me that what I was buying, I was being charged for. The details. Azure, no detail. Google, no detail. If I had 3 things here, 3 things there. Azure, if I had 3 things here, they'd have 1 thing here. And I was like, I can't break this down. Is there value? What's the value? What's the value? Can I save? Can I trim? Can I add? Can I subtract? Etc. All these things mattered. So all I can say is, I'm going to stop here for now. Let me see where the video is at. And this is Andy from Mountain Computers, the Go Green PC Tune-Up guy, and I'll be right back. Okay? So let's pause, and we'll be right back.